Lights, camera, drama. But this wasn't your usual talk show drama, the kind where a guest goes off script or a host fumbles a question. No, this was something entirely different. A picture-perfect interview turned public relations nightmare. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle, the woman who once captivated the world as a fresh face in the royal family, walking into the Drew Barrymore Show like she owned the place, only to leave behind a trail of tension, frost, and fury. It started as a dream pairing. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of headlines, known for her Netflix specials, explosive interviews, and highly curated media image, sitting down across from Drew Barrymore, America's feel-good sweetheart, the queen of vulnerability and warmth. A conversation between two powerful women, two mothers, two survivors of public scrutiny. What could go wrong? Apparently, everything.
Right, with Meghan Markle, who claims to view Princess Diana as some type of guardian angel, who tells Prince Harry that she communicates with his late mother on a regular basis. She even sometimes comes down and talks to her when she's in yoga. But the moment that
Because behind the hugs and rehearsed smiles, behind the studio lights and soft background music, something was brewing. Something cold, something calculated, something that would leave even Drew Barrymore, one of the most beloved figures in daytime television, shaken enough to confront her guest backstage with a chilling warning. You can't treat my staff like this.
Thank you for coming here. I've been watching your show with love, which is really, wonderful.
What went down that day wasn't just another awkward celebrity interview. This was a full-on media meltdown, one that exposed the growing gap between Meghan Markle's public image and what insiders say happens when the cameras stop rolling. And for once, it didn't just happen behind closed doors. The cracks showed on live television, and the fallout, immediate, brutal, and unforgiving.
I've heard you like to connect.
Octopus, I really do.
That's so sweet, though.
I'm such a warm person and I love affection. How do you feel about that?
I just think it's really important. We've missed.
So, what really happened that day? What caused the joyful, energetic vibe of the Drew Barrymore Show to collapse into icy silence? And more importantly, what does it reveal about Meghan Markle that no polished PR campaign can fix? Let's go behind the curtain. Even before Meghan's SUV pulled into the studio lot, something was off. It wasn't the weather, it wasn't the guest lineup, it wasn't even the usual showtime jitters that come with welcoming a royal onto the stage.
Where you are today.
Yeah.
So Mindy's a great example of that, or some of the other guests that came on that I hadn't had close bonds with, I knew a little bit of. And then you just get to play, and you're in the kitchen playing and making mistakes and having fun together, and I think that's what I'm hoping translates.
Can I tell you something I've heard?
No, this was different. Crew members who had been on the Drew Barrymore Show for years, people who'd worked with A-listers, rock stars, politicians, and everyone in between, felt it in their gut. There was a heaviness in the air, a hush behind the scenes, a kind of unspoken pressure that blanketed the studio like fog before a storm.
So sweet, though.
I'm such a warm person and I love affection. How do you feel about that?
I just think it's really important. We've missed human connection, certainly after the pandemic and everything else. And we crave that. We crave being able to go hi and like, my friend, are you here? And to really be able to hold and touch and embrace someone. And so
One longtime lighting technician later said, "I've never seen the team that quiet. Something was weird, like we were all holding our breath." Then came the rider, a list of requirements from Meghan's team that read less like suggestions and more like royal decrees. Lighting had to be not just flattering, but custom configured for each camera angle. Makeup artists were given strict notes. The seat on set, it needed to be measured, tested, and adjusted multiple times to avoid any chance of awkward posture. Even the floral arrangements were allegedly tweaked after being deemed too loud for her preferred vibe. Still, the crew was used to celebrities having preferences. This wasn't their first high-profile guest, but what really made eyebrows shoot up wasn't the lighting or the seat height, it was the script. Producers were handed a heavily redlined version of the original interview questions. pages marked up by Meghan's media team with corrections, omissions, and flat-out rejections. Topics that hinted at vulnerability or spontaneity were quietly removed. Questions that veered too close to her past, her family, or anything remotely unfiltered, gone. What remained was a sterile set of talking points, restructured to serve one clear goal: control the narrative at all costs.
I think holds on to it because it makes him feel better. But Meghan can't allow anyone else there because this is very, very private. And she gets, I think, very, very angry if anything else happens.
One producer was overheard muttering, "We're not doing a conversation here. We're staging a performance." Even Drew's team, known in the industry for being adaptable, easygoing, and unshakably positive, started to feel the pressure. One staff member said, "It felt like we were being watched the entire time, triple-checking lighting cues, whispering instead of talking. It was like we were afraid to make a single mistake." And Meghan hadn't even walked through the door yet. The moment Meghan stepped into the building, the atmosphere shifted completely. For a show built on spontaneity, kindness, and joy, her arrival felt more like the opening scene of a royal inspection. No wave, no smile, no small talk. Just a quiet, calculated entrance, surrounded by staff who moved quickly and spoke in hushed tones. It was as if every second had been choreographed down to the exact number of paces from the car door to the dressing room. And that's when it started.
Someone else has met her and feels that she was wonderful, and that feels that she's also in the same group. She doesn't want that at all. We've even seen with Meghan that she's all alone.
One producer later admitted they had never seen a green room flipped so quickly. Meghan's team reportedly reworked the lighting rig, swapped out accent pillows, and even asked for the ambient scent to be toned down to avoid triggering sensitivities. The camera crew was instructed to run additional angle tests on the spot to confirm that no side profile, no lighting curve, no shadow would be unflattering. Even the teleprompter font size was changed, but the demands didn't stop there. One crew member said, "It wasn't like, 'Hey, can we fix this?' It was more like, 'Do this now, change that, that's not good enough.' No hello, no please, just orders." Still, nothing rattled the team more than the level of scrutiny placed on the interview itself. In a show that thrives on real, unfiltered moments, Meghan's appearance had been locked down tighter than a royal press conference. Every question, every word, had been filtered through her media reps, dissected and rewritten until the entire conversation felt like a corporate product launch. Drew Barrymore, known for her freewheeling style, was suddenly boxed in by a list of pre-cleared talking points. Her usual warmth and curiosity had been trimmed to fit within carefully controlled boundaries. One insider said, "It was like watching someone do improv with invisible handcuffs." Even the seating was adjusted multiple times, not just for comfort, but for optics. Meghan reportedly asked for her chair to be subtly elevated, tilted, and angled to ensure a posture that conveyed both authority and poise. A veteran studio staffer put it bluntly, "I've worked with Oscar winners, politicians, pop stars, you name it, but this was next-level micromanagement. We weren't producing an interview, we were producing a portrait." But perhaps the most shocking and quietly controversial moment happened before cameras even rolled.
Hailing, who I love.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's such a rock
so
star.
Great. But also that was what was, I think, for me, really fun about doing the series is I could have some of my older friendships that I've had since middle school even, that are still in my life. And I think at the end of the day, you just really want to be able to show up with.
While reviewing the show script, Meghan's team made a last-minute change. She would not be introduced as Meghan Markle, not as the former actress, not as the Duchess of Sussex, not even as Meghan. Instead, she wanted to be formally introduced as Meghan Sussex. 2 words, one chilling effect. To most viewers, it might have seemed like a small branding decision, maybe even elegant. But to the crew, it became an unspoken rule enforced with brutal precision. According to multiple sources, anyone who accidentally referred to her as Meghan Markle was swiftly corrected by her team, often in front of others, with a tone that left no room for error. "She's not royalty anymore," one backstage producer whispered, but she sure acted like it. The use of Meghan Sussex wasn't just about formality. It was about image, about control, about erasing the parts of her identity that didn't fit the new narrative. She was no longer the Hollywood actress. She was no longer the struggling royal. She was now a one-name brand, regal, detached, and above the common fray. One sound tech said it best. It felt like she wanted us to forget she was ever human, like Markle was too messy, too emotional, too real. The studio floor, normally buzzing with jokes and chatter, turned eerily quiet. People avoided eye contact. Small mistakes turned into full-blown stress triggers. And the woman at the center of it all moved through the room with the kind of distant grace that said, "You work for me, not with me." When asked later about the vibe on set, one staff member didn't mince words.
Given a nice sense of you guys on a very beautiful, intimate note.
Thank you.
Every time I ever know anyone who knows you guys, talk about how hot, this is the key word, everyone, and they're different people
What is she
from
about
different
to
walks
say?
of life. They go, they're so hot for each other.
It felt like we were hosting a monarch, not a guest. There was no collaboration, just expectation. And yet, this was only the beginning. If you've ever watched The Drew Barrymore Show, you know the vibe. It's not just another daytime talk show. It's a sunshine factory. The crew high fives. Guests often bring laughter and spontaneous tears. Drew herself is known for leaning into moments of warmth, chaos, and vulnerability, like few others in the business. And behind the scenes, it's more family than film set. But on the day Meghan Markle arrived, the temperature in the room didn't just drop, it plummeted. From the very moment she entered, the usual energy was gone. The crew, used to guests cracking jokes and hugging the staff, found themselves invisible. Meghan reportedly didn't acknowledge anyone. Not the lighting guy holding a boom arm for 20 minutes. Not the assistant refilling her water. Not even the makeup artist who quietly adjusted her powder before showtime. One crew member put it plainly, "She looked through us like we weren't there. Like props. Like we were part of the furniture." And for a show that runs on human connection, it was jarring. Not because the staff demanded attention or praise, but because the absence of basic decency was so deafening. No good morning, no small talk, no curiosity about the people helping her look flawless on national television, just an invisible wall between her and everyone else.
Bonds with, I knew a little bit of, and then you just get to play, and you're in the kitchen playing and making mistakes and having fun together, and I think that's what I'm hoping translates.
Can I tell you something? I've heard from people over the years that, and I watched, Harry and Meghan on Netflix, of course, and so I feel like.
Another staffer shared that Drew, who normally greets her team with hugs and check-ins, seemed visibly unsettled by the shift in energy. It's like she was trying to hold on to the vibe herself, they said, but you could see it slipping away. It wasn't that Meghan was outwardly rude or explosive. No one reported a meltdown or shouting match. But sometimes the coldest kind of tension is the quiet kind, the kind that infects a room and leaves everyone unsure of themselves. Were they supposed to speak first? Were they even allowed to? Even during rehearsals, the air was thick with unease. Minor changes in lighting brought panicked glances between team members, as if waiting for Meghan's camp to issue another correction. One assistant whispered to another, "I feel like I'm going to get fired just for breathing too loud." And once the cameras started rolling, things didn't thaw. They just got more uncomfortable. The usual warmth of the show, gone. The natural laughter between Drew and her guests, missing. Instead, the interview unfolded like a scene from a period drama. Formal, stiff, and wrapped in the kind of tension you can't quite name, but everyone feels. And yet, even with all the frost in the room, no one could have predicted what would happen next. It was supposed to be a sweet, nostalgic moment. During a segment about personal memories, Drew Barrymore, smiling, open-hearted, her usual self, reached for a framed photograph. It showed her as a wide-eyed young actress meeting none other than Princess Diana. The audience gave a warm sigh. It was the kind of moment that's become a hallmark of Drew's hosting style. Gentle, personal, completely uncalculated. But as she shared the story, something changed. Meghan's face, so carefully poised throughout the interview, shifted. At first, it was subtle. The corners of her mouth lost their lift. Her posture stiffened. Her eyes, locked on the photo for just a second too long, seemed to narrow ever so slightly. But the camera caught it, and so did the internet. Because this wasn't just any memory being shared. This was a memory featuring the very woman Meghan had publicly compared herself to for years, Princess Diana. Meghan has often described Diana as a spiritual guide, a source of strength, and even claimed to feel her presence during yoga. She's used Diana's legacy to frame her own narrative of being misunderstood, mistreated, and magnified by the media.
Now, the Drew Barrymore Show got such pushback on all of this, Angela, they've actually had to protect their posts on X. But at the end of the day, can you understand why people are so horrified that as soon as this Netflix show had to be promoted, all of the thoughts of privacy of the children is out the window?
Yeah.
So when Drew, casual, unrehearsed Drew, shared a photo of her own real-life encounter with Diana, it hit differently. This wasn't branding. It wasn't PR spin. It was real. And for Meghan, whose entire image has been so tightly wrapped around Diana's memory, it landed like a dagger. She didn't interrupt. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. Viewers would later flood social media with comments. One wrote, "Meghan looked like she swallowed a lemon." Another joked, "Her PR team probably had a meltdown during that segment." And many just said what everyone was thinking. For one brief second, the mask slipped. Because while Meghan has spent years carefully curating her public image to mirror Diana's grace and victimhood, what Drew shared wasn't curated. It was just human. No stylists, no campaign, no Netflix crew, just a girl meeting a princess and remembering it decades later with nothing but joy. And in that small moment, Meghan seemed to realize something. For once, she wasn't the main character. Behind the smiles and studio lights, something finally snapped. The second the cameras stopped rolling, Meghan stood up, collected herself, and, according to one crew member, walked off set without a word. No thank you, no great show, no post-wrap chat with the producers. Just a quick, silent exit like she was racing the discomfort to the door. But for Drew Barrymore, that silence said too much. Drew had spent the entire shoot doing what she does best, trying to create warmth, connection, and joy, even in the face of visible emotional resistance. She had smiled when the room felt cold. She had reached out, literally and emotionally, when Meghan kept pulling back. And she had done her job like the pro she is. But what she saw behind the scenes, that was something different, something personal. Because what Drew witnessed wasn't just diva behavior, it was disrespect. Multiple insiders later confirmed the tension backstage had reached a boiling point. Crew members whispered about the way Meghan's team issued corrections like commands, the way she refused to acknowledge even the most basic gestures of kindness from staff, the way she acted like their smiles, their small talk, their humanity didn't matter. And Drew, sweet, bubbly, sunshine in human form Drew, was done.
To protect their posts on X. But at the end of the day, can you understand why people are so horrified that as soon as this Netflix show had to be promoted, all of the thoughts of privacy of the children is out the window?
Yes.
According to those present, Drew marched down the hall after Meghan left the stage and pulled her aside in a private corridor. What followed wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't a celebrity tantrum. It was a woman standing up for her people with steel in her spine. "You cannot treat my staff like this," she reportedly said, voice trembling but clear. Those 7 words weren't screamed. They didn't need to be. They landed with the kind of finality you only hear when someone has hit their limit. This wasn't about ego or headlines. It was about respect. And for Drew, protecting her crew, people she's worked with for years, through good days and bad, was non-negotiable. But Meghan, she didn't flinch. According to sources, she didn't apologize or explain. Instead, she doubled down, insisting that her expectations were standard for someone of her profile, that her team's control over the interview was justified, that the boundaries she imposed were reasonable, even if they left others uncomfortable. The exchange ended cold. No handshakes, no resolution, just a parting glance and 2 women walking in opposite directions, one quietly furious, the other unbothered and unapologetic. Backstage, the crew stood in silence. They had just seen a side of Drew Barrymore few ever witness, a fierce protector who wasn't afraid to speak up when lines were crossed. "She didn't lose her temper," one staffer said. "She stood tall. She made it clear that kindness isn't a costume here. It's how we treat each other. Period. And while Meghan may have walked away believing she'd won by maintaining her composure, Drew walked away with something far more powerful: the loyalty of everyone in that room. It didn't take long for the internet to catch on. The moment the interview aired, viewers around the world tuned in expecting something raw, maybe even redemptive. A heart-to-heart between two women known for their strength, vulnerability, and resilience. But what they got instead? Something cold, something awkward, something off. And the internet? It went nuclear. Clips of the interview flooded social media, with users dissecting every blink, every half smile, every stiff exchange. The tension was so palpable it practically leaked through the screen. One tweet summed it up in 8 brutal words. Meghan came in cold and left even colder. But the real explosion happened after the behind-the-scenes reports started leaking. Insiders speaking off the record, crew members venting anonymously, headlines teasing backstage chaos, and an off-camera confrontation that stunned everyone.
Again, it's like, I know this is really you.
Oh, yeah.
Because Harry, may I call him Harry? By the
Yeah,
way?
I call him
just
H.
blurted that
Yeah, yes, of course.
out. Okay.
That's his name.
Mr. Sussex?
Exactly.
And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle, once again accused of being something she desperately denies in public. Difficult, dismissive, and emotionally distant, the backlash hit fast and hard. Hashtags like #Team Drew, #Mean Meghan, and #Icy interview started trending. Commenters flooded posts with side-by-side clips of Meghan's stiff responses versus Drew's sincere warmth. Memes exploded. One showed a block of ice with Meghan's face on it. Another, Drew holding a flamethrower labeled human decency. One viral comment, now shared over 20,000 times, read, "You learn everything about a person by how they treat people who can't do anything for them." Meghan failed that test live on camera. And the criticism didn't stop at her attitude. People brought up old interviews, past accusations, royal drama, PR spin. A narrative that was supposed to soften her image had done the exact opposite. It reminded people of everything they already questioned. Even fans who once defended Meghan found themselves unsure. The vibe wasn't misunderstood. It was undeniable. And the worst part? This wasn't new. This wasn't an isolated bad day. This was part of a pattern. A trail of scorched earth from palace staff to publicists to now, daytime crew members. And for many watching, the illusion had finally shattered. Meanwhile, Drew Barrymore, who never issued a public statement or posted a cryptic caption, was being hailed as the real queen of daytime TV. Not because she made noise, but because she didn't need to. Her actions backstage said everything, and viewers noticed. "Protect Drew Barrymore at all costs," one comment read. Another, "Drew didn't need to clap back. Her kindness and integrity did the talking." As for Meghan, the internet wasn't done with her yet. For those who had been following Meghan Markle's public journey from the beginning, none of this came as a surprise. Because as shocking as the Drew Barrymore drama was, it wasn't the first time Meghan's behavior had made headlines. And it definitely wasn't the first time staff walked away feeling exhausted, dismissed, and emotionally drained. In fact, for some former employees, this incident was just the latest chapter in a much longer book.
Thrown out the window at a moment's notice. Now, Angela,
When you want it.
Yeah,
Gone.
totally. Just gone. Lots of people were talking about how insincere the interaction was between Meghan and Drew Barrymore. We've put together a bit of a compilation, Angela. Watch this.
And everything else, and we crave that.
Royal insiders have spoken about it for years. Long before Meghan and Harry stepped back from royal duties, before the Oprah interview, before the Netflix deals and California mansions, there were murmurs behind palace walls, whispers of impossible demands, of emotionally tense meetings, of staff leaving in tears, and those whispers turned into something much louder. In 2021, just days before Meghan and Harry's Oprah interview aired, reports surfaced that Buckingham Palace had launched a quiet internal investigation into allegations of bullying from former royal aides. Some staffers who worked under Meghan reportedly referred to themselves as members of the Sussex Survivor Squad. One even claimed Meghan's treatment was so cruel, she had to be comforted by Prince William after an emotional breakdown. The palace, for its part, kept the findings of that investigation sealed, perhaps to avoid further public fallout, but the damage had already been done. The headlines were out there, the quotes undeniable. "She's a narcissistic sociopath," one former staffer was quoted as saying in Valentine Lowe's explosive royal book Courtiers. Another called working under Meghan like serving a monarch without a crown. Except the monarch never acknowledged your existence. And now, on the other side of the Atlantic, in a Hollywood studio full of seasoned professionals, the same energy had returned. Controlling, dismissive, ice-cold professionalism with no room for kindness. It didn't matter whether you were a royal aide or a boom mic operator. If you weren't part of the image, you were background noise. Some began to wonder, was Meghan's real talent her ability to rewrite her story again and again? Victim here, hero there. Misunderstood Duchess on Monday, glamorous underdog on Friday. But behind the curtain, no matter the setting, the same complaints keep resurfacing. A trail of bruised relationships, silenced criticism, and a media machine spinning just fast enough to keep the public guessing who the real Meghan is. But for those who've worked with her, on palace grounds or Hollywood sound stages, the answer seems painfully consistent. She preaches empathy, but she rules with detachment. She champions kindness, but expects submission. And when called out, she doesn't apologize. She pivots, she reframes, she spins, until the cycle starts all over again. If the Drew Barrymore interview wasn't enough to raise eyebrows, what came next set off full-scale alarms. Because just as the backlash over Meghan's frosty demeanor began to mount, and news of her backstage clash with Drew started leaking, another element of the interview drew criticism.
Full of information, and Meghan doesn't like that. It makes her feel very awkward, I think. And she was moving all the time. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to touch her, but on the other hand, maybe she should. Very, very uneasy.
This time, it wasn't about lighting or staff treatment. It was about her children. Throughout the interview, Meghan dropped personal anecdotes about Archie and Lilibet, mentioning their personalities, their funny habits, even flashing never-before-seen photos and videos. Clips that showed bedtime moments, snack time chaos, and warm family interactions. And on the surface, it felt tender, relatable, maternal. But the timing, that's what left people suspicious. Because Meghan and Harry have been famously guarded about their kids' privacy, fighting paparazzi, suing tabloids, and issuing public pleas to keep their children out of the spotlight. They've spoken repeatedly about the trauma of media intrusion and vowed to raise Archie and Lilibet away from flashing bulbs and gossip headlines. So why, people asked, were they now suddenly being used as soft-focus content for a Netflix promo tour? Was this maternal pride or a strategic image play? One viral tweet summed up the backlash perfectly. They sued photographers for taking pictures of their kids, but now she's showing bedtime clips on talk shows to sell a docuseries? Another added, she doesn't want privacy, she wants control. Body language analysts soon chimed in, noting how Meghan's moments talking about her kids felt strangely stiff and overly rehearsed. The smiles didn't quite reach her eyes. The stories, though technically sweet, landed more like PR copy than genuine emotion. To critics, it felt like the most sacred bond, motherhood, had been reduced to a talking point. And for many viewers already uncomfortable with how the Drew interview had gone, this was the final push. The contradiction was too blatant, too bold. One moment, Meghan is pleading for space to protect her children. The next, she's offering curated glimpses of their lives as sympathy bait amid growing backlash. It didn't read as vulnerability, it read as strategy. And for an audience that had spent years watching Meghan frame herself as a victim of media cruelty, the whiplash was real. Some called it tone-deaf, others called it manipulative, but most agreed it wasn't authentic, because if there's one thing viewers can spot these days, it's when someone uses their family to sell a brand.
Lovable. He's easy to love.
He's been through extraordinary things. He's come out the other side. I admire some rebelliousness. I have some too. I think he's so amazing. I've been such a uber fan of his, and I don't know him at all, but watching as we've all watched him, I got to meet his mom when I was 7 years old.
With Love, Meghan was supposed to be her redemption arc. After years of public scrutiny, viral interviews, and polarizing headlines, this Netflix series was carefully marketed as Meghan's heartfelt return to form. A chance to show the world who she really was, beyond the titles, the tabloids, the royal drama. Viewers were promised rawness, vulnerability, truth. What they got instead? A glossy, perfectly manicured reality show masquerading as a docuseries. From the opening shot, critics clocked the tone. Soft lighting, slow-motion coffee pours, and scenes of Meghan arranging fruit like it was a Vogue editorial. Every frame was designed to feel effortlessly intimate, except it didn't. It felt staged, sterile, heavily rehearsed, and the public noticed. One critic compared it to a Hallmark movie with a god complex. Another wrote, "She said she wanted to be seen for who she truly is. But I've never felt like I was watching a person, just a brand presentation in real time." The backlash was immediate and vicious. What should have been a raw confessional about motherhood, marriage, and mental health instead played out like a luxury lifestyle pitch. The dialogue was overly polished, the scenes felt scripted, the emotions so filtered they might as well have been AI generated, and the inconsistencies were hard to ignore. For someone who built her public image on pushing back against royal formality and a lack of agency, Meghan's own series mirrored everything she once criticized. The wardrobe changes were endless. The kitchen was so pristine it looked unused. Even the candid conversations felt like retakes from a scripted drama. But perhaps most damaging was how the series framed Meghan's identity. Rather than exploring her biracial heritage, her activism, or her journey with honesty, the show leaned on emotionally manipulative beats, using race, motherhood, and victimhood as plot devices, not genuine experiences. Critics didn't hold back. "She turned trauma into a brand," one wrote. "Every episode was like a TED Talk where the goal wasn't connection, it was control." And fans who had long supported her began to fall silent. There was no groundswell of support like after the Oprah interview. No "Protect Meghan at all costs" campaigns trending online. Just an uncomfortable collective pause. Even the Daily Mail, normally critical of Meghan, published a bizarrely glowing review, so out of step with their typical tone that readers immediately questioned its authenticity.
Obviously, there were a lot of lies as well in the interview. Angela,
Oh, yes. I did this, you did, I did this and that, and they all thought I was amazing, and then I went on to this and that. I mean, we can all do that, but we shouldn't. But, you know, it's ridiculous to do that. She doesn't have to grab all that information. I don't think she needs to do that. She's got things which she can.
One commenter wrote, "If that was a puff piece, it wasn't just soft. It was a pillow factory." The damage was clear. Instead of rewriting her story, Meghan had simply confirmed the worst fears of her critics, that every move was calculated, every message filtered, every emotion performed. With love, Meghan wasn't a love letter. It was a misfire, a $100 million mirror that reflected exactly what people were tired of seeing: the performance of authenticity without the substance to back it up. When you zoom out and look at the last 5 years of Meghan Markle's public life, a pattern begins to form, and it's not a flattering one. The palace staff who left in tears, the high-profile feuds with British tabloids, the Oprah interview that shook Buckingham Palace, the Spotify deal that crashed and burned, the podcast that disappeared after a dozen episodes, the image rehab campaigns that never quite landed, and now, the Drew Barrymore clash. In each instance, the story plays out the same way. Meghan steps into the spotlight with promises of realness, vulnerability, and connection. The media hypes it. The fans rally, the headlines multiply. But then, slowly, painfully, the narrative begins to fall apart. Reports surface about impossible working conditions. Behind-the-scenes staff leak horror stories. Viewers start to question the sincerity behind the curated sound bites. And Meghan, she doesn't explain. She doesn't own up. She pivots, spins, doubles down. It's a media loop, a branding boomerang. And it's exhausting for everyone involved. Because Meghan isn't being judged on who she is. She's being judged on the widening gap between her message and her methods. She preaches female empowerment, but allegedly bulldozes the women who work beneath her. She says she values family, but alienates both sides of hers. She cries for privacy, then invites Netflix into her home. She champions compassion, but leaves people feeling invisible. The truth is, the world doesn't hate Meghan because she's strong or outspoken. The world is just tired of the performance. Audiences today crave authenticity, not perfection, not brand alignment, not polished victimhood served in glossy packaging. They want the mess, the honesty, the humility to say, "Yeah, I messed that up." And Meghan, she's never once let herself be that unfiltered. Not really. Not without backup cameras, not without narrative control, not without someone holding her mic.
I'm very lucky. I am married to the funniest, sweetest, most charming. I mean, he's all the things that you're describing. He's an amazing father. And so, you know, blessings because I have him, and also I have a partner who is so supportive of me. And so I will tell you just, when I was...
That's the pattern. The same one Palisades warned about years ago. The same one Drew Barrymore's crew just experienced firsthand. And unless something changes, the same one Meghan Markle will carry with her into every interview, every boardroom, every platform she touches. Because you can change your outfit. You can change your location. But if you never change your behavior, eventually the audience stops clapping. For years, Meghan Markle has sold the world a carefully constructed story, a tale of strength, of survival, of a woman navigating impossible pressure while trying to protect her family and remain true to herself. And for a while, it worked. The press was brutal. The palace politics were cold. People wanted to believe she was the lone voice against a broken system. But now, that story is starting to unravel. Not because of what others say, but because of what she does when the script runs out. The Drew Barrymore incident didn't just expose Meghan's behavior on a single day. It echoed a pattern seen time and time again, a hunger for control masked as vulnerability, a curated version of authenticity with no room for anyone else to speak freely, and a coldness that lingers long after the lights go out. She says all the right things, but often does the wrong ones. She talks about connection, but leaves people feeling discarded. She promises compassion, but delivers tension. And in an age where realness is the only currency that still holds value, Meghan Markle keeps handing the public counterfeit.
In advance to make sure it was there when I got to my hotel room. It was really sweet.
Okay, what's your favorite thing that you see in your kids that you go...
But Drew, she didn't need a comeback or a viral post. She didn't need a press release or a carefully managed narrative. She defended her people with 7 simple words. You can't treat my staff like this. That wasn't just a moment. It was a message to the crew, to the viewers, to anyone watching from the shadows, wondering if kindness still matters in this business. It does. Because in a world full of rehearsed answers and brand consultants, sometimes the most powerful move isn't to speak louder. It's to act better. And Drew Barrymore? She didn't just walk away from this with her integrity intact. She walked away with something Meghan Markle still can't buy with all the PR in the world: respect. So the next time Meghan Markle sits down for another carefully curated interview, remember what happened when she couldn't control the room. The mask didn't just slip, it cracked. And for the first time, the world saw what was underneath.